Hello, and welcome to this Fathers Group video about communication. This is the first of 3 videos you put together for fathers, and we hope it will give you a few tips on how to communicate well with your kids and how to build relationships with them. My name is Alex Francis. I work for Southwark Council's Family Early Help Department. We're especially aware that during this time of lockdown, communication with your children will be quite important. So during this video, I'll be speaking to our Fathers Group Programme Lead, Mr. Ben Campbell, about strategies for good communication with your family. If you could find 15 minutes during your day, please sit down and watch this video. You can pause it, you can stop it where needs be, in case you would like to make notes. So without further ado, here's the video. Morning, Mr. Campbell. How are you?
Morning, Alex. How you doing, mate? You all right?
Not too bad, sir. Not too bad. So we've got a few questions here. Obviously, since we're talking about communication, I'll ask you this very simple one. Why is communication important?
If you're able to communicate well and get your children to understand what you're trying to say, then it makes your life a lot easier, because if you can communicate in a clear way, in a child-friendly way, then you've got more chance of them listening to you. Probably communication is, I'd say, one of the most important parts of any parenting, and without it, you're going to really struggle, I would say.
Just to follow on from that, I understand what you're saying, but could you perhaps give me a few examples of what, in your opinion, good communication looks like?
For younger children, for example, if you're able to use kind of simple, more straightforward instructions when you're talking to your children. As your children get older and wiser themselves, you can start to use a bit more sort of detailed communication. We've got very difficult, busy lives. Often we try and communicate with our children whilst we're trying to juggle making dinner or homework or our own work. And so often you need to kind of stop what you're doing and focus, even for a moment or two. Try and get some eye contact going with your child. And that way you know that they're kind of looking at you and hopefully focused on you rather than their PlayStation or TV or anything like that.
Is that how I would model good communication skills to my children? By me, like you say, stopping what I'm doing, giving them good eye contact, and focusing solely on them?
Yeah, absolutely, Alex. I mean, I think if you want your children to behave in a certain way, the best thing to start with is to demonstrate that behaviour in your own communication with your children. So the more positivity that you can exude in your communication, then hopefully that will resonate with your children and they will start to copy you. One of the kind of key parts about having a good relationship with your child is using praise and using lots of it. What I mean by that is focusing on the good things that children are doing, no matter how small it is, and then almost kind of doubling the praise on top of that. It's going to have a massive impact on the child, on their ability to probably do those things again, but also overall is going to have a really positive impact on your relationship. Giving praise also lifts self-esteem. So if your child is struggling a little bit with any aspect of life, then if they know that they can speak to their dad and that their dad is going to give them positive reinforcement, then that's going to, again, make that child feel better about themselves. So really, praise is one of the most key components of any parenting, really.
I learned that praising children works a magic on them. My children enjoy company with me now, and they feel more open to come forward and talk to me about their problems. That wasn't the case before.
I think the other aspect of communication and way that we can really focus on building up a good relationship with our child is actually emphasising the fact that you want to spend time with them, that you enjoy spending time with them. Obviously, that gives your children self-esteem and makes them feel like they're important in your life. And so when you decide to spend some quality time or special time with your children, one of the most important parts of that is that it's child-led. What I mean by that is that you ask them what you would like to do. If you have a toddler or a very small child, You may just want to play with some of the kind of activities that they would like to play with, maybe some Lego or blocks, or they might have some little figures or anything like that, and maybe get involved with that. Maybe an 8 or 9-year-old, you could get them doing some cooking or some baking. When you start wanting to share some time with a teenager or an adolescent, then obviously that can be slightly more challenging. It may be that if your 12 or 13-year-old boy wants to play some Fortnite or some other kind of game on the Xbox, and you really don't like the Xbox, it may be that you have to just say, look, let me give this a go and try it, and who knows, you might even enjoy it.
Tips I've learned from the father group to communicate with your kid is be more involved and get more interactive with them, and ask them questions about what they did and how they done it. Question it a bit more and find out a bit more and get more involved, and it's worked really well for me. Yeah, we're really happy communicating and talking all the time.
Spending time with your children, doing the things that they want to do, is a very, very important aspect of parenting, and something that we should really try and get involved into our day-to-day routine.
Because one thing that you said that I am quite keen to hear more about is you say you must also stay positive. But with what's happening now, especially with lockdown, we don't have a clue when things will get back to normal. How do we stay positive, especially in front of our children and around our children?
I mean, it's a great question. I think at the moment, the difficulties that we're experiencing with lockdown and things like that kind of are the same for everyone. I think it goes back to trying to enjoy the kind of moments that we have, and rather than thinking about all the things that we're not able to do at the moment because of a lockdown, maybe think about the kind of good things. You've got an opportunity to really spend some really good quality time with your children, get to know them a bit more, focus on that relationship, and just enjoy each other's company for what it is. It's easy to kind of become upset or annoyed yourself. And again, it comes back to the modelling. If you're able to model with your children that you can enjoy these moments and focus on the positives rather than the negatives, then that hopefully will have a good knock-on effect to your children and make them also enjoy these kind of difficult circumstances.
Great answer. And another follow-on to that is this sort of thing going on, a lot of men maybe not being in employment. How can we keep our mental health at a level where it doesn't begin to affect our children? Because it just seems as if there isn't so many resources during these times for fathers or men with caring responsibilities.
Yeah, again, great question. I think generally men have traditionally been very poor at, first of all, acknowledging that they might be struggling with their own mental health, and certainly struggle to speak to either a friend or a family member or even a professional about getting some support for themselves. I think in this day and age, it's vital that men really do focus on their mental health, because if you have good mental health and you feel well in yourself, then you're going to be far more likely to be available for your children when that time comes. There are lots of support agencies for men to tap into. And do you know what? I think it's now okay to say, do you know what? I am struggling and I need some help, and can you help me with this? Then I think the GP is probably the first point of call. One of the key parts of the fathers group is that we get men to come together and talk about issues, not just around looking after children and the kind of day-to-day parenting things, but also it gets men talking about their own thoughts and feelings. It reduces your isolation. We can set up some one-to-one support for men if they would like to, and that can include telephone calls or video calls, and we will have lots of WhatsApp groups as well, and that we'll be able to support you as best as we can.
My experience with the fathers group is really good. I've met a lot of people who was going through the same trouble I was going through and a lot of problems, and it was nice to express myself, how I felt, what was going on in my life, and people actually listened to me and gave me a lot of support. Just not judgmental, just how you can cope with things and how you do deal with things.
I opened up a bit more, I shared a lot of my problems and found that fellow fathers were experiencing similar problems, so we were able to discuss a lot between us and come up with different solutions and problem solving, and activities for children and things like that.
I think as well as kind of accessing some of the resources that are available, Alex, I think the first thing is just to be a bit more self-aware. Just take some time to think about how you're feeling. If you're feeling stressed or unwell or kind of overwhelmed by all of this, I think it's okay to kind of take a little bit of time out. I don't know, maybe go and sit in the bathroom for 5 minutes, have a cup of tea, just do whatever kind of makes you feel happier, go to your happy place, so to speak. If you have access to kind of friends and family, I think that having kind of conversations with those people and trusted loved ones is very important. If you're hoping to kind of understand a bit more about your own children and how they're feeling at any time, not just at the moment, and again, you've got a model that you are willing to do that as well.
If you are getting stressed, if you are getting annoyed, how do you have any strategies that might be able to help, especially fathers, cope with conflict with their children?
I mean, I think during these times when we're all probably trapped inside a bit more and probably spending a lot more time with our young people and children than normal, don't have too many high expectations on yourself as a person, but also on your ability to be a dad or a parent to your children. I think just take a step back, breathe, and just relax, and just talk to your children. Tell your children about what it was like for you growing up. One of the good things that makes your children realise that you do understand what they're talking about and what they're going through is to maybe give them examples about all the silly things that you did when you were a child. I'm sure we've all got a couple of stories. Children
who are teenagers, they understand it, they see the news, they understand what's going on. But for children that are a bit young, do you have any tips basically on just how to reassure, especially young children, that this will pass and we will get through it and life will go on? They are going to be listening to what you say and listening to how you behave and how you do things. So if you're able to kind of explain this kind of very difficult circumstances to the children in a way that they'll understand and focus on all of the great things that maybe the NHS are doing, or that there are people out there that are working hard to ensure that we're all going to be safe and that we're all going to be able to return to normal at some point, then that's the first starting point. I guess if you're kind of giving the impression that you're very anxious and you're very worried about everything, then that is going to kind of almost pass on to your children. The second thing I would say is you need to ask your children questions about it. What I mean by that is open questions. Ask them how they're feeling. Don't get them to respond with yes or no answers. Spend more time, listening to them, waiting for their responses. Don't put kind of messages in their mouths, but get a real sense of kind of why they're upset and why they're anxious about things. But I think, again, there are a lot of resources out there that are very straightforward, child-friendly ways of explaining what the coronavirus is, how you can get it, what you can do to protect yourself, hand washing and all of those sorts of things. And if we stay positive and use those sort of techniques, that's the best thing you can do. When, families are under pressure, what's the sort of impact that it will have on children, especially if us as parents aren't maybe being as patient, communicating as openly with them? What effect will that have on children? Parenting under normal circumstances is a very difficult job, without a doubt, 100% very difficult. There's a real sort of thought process to try and be this perfect dad, this perfect person. The reality is that that perfect person just does not exist. We've all got our frailties. We've all got times when we're feeling stressed and anxious, and that can have an impact on our parenting. If you have a moment where you perhaps are not happy with the way you behaved around your child, I think the best way to do it and to model what you would expect all people to do is to kind of put your hands up and say, you know what, I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. I shouldn't have behaved like that. I'm sorry. And these are the things that I'm going to do to kind of make sure that I, try my very best not to do that again. And actually that is in itself is probably one of the most beautiful things you can do for your children is get them to understand that no one is perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. It's what we do with those mistakes, that we own up to those mistakes. We apologise.
the relationship that you have with your child will certainly strengthen, because they will see that you're trying your very best, and they'll learn good, valuable life lessons on the back of that as well. So I think those are the key parts of communication for sure.
Thanks for watching. We hope this video has given you a few pointers on communicating well with your kids.